Welcome to our 7th edition of FSI Fridays. I'm Johansson, one of your co-hosts out of Charlotte, joined by Edwin in Boston. As a quick reminder, we'll spend the first 30 minutes talking on today's topic and leave the last 15 minutes to address any burning questions. Please use the Q&A window and we'll monitor during the presentation. So Edwin, what exciting session do we have in store for today?
Thanks, Johansson, and happy Friday. I'm thrilled to introduce Chris Shanku, who has a pretty cool title, Intelligence Technical Specialist. Chris, man, I wish I had known you from years back when I was a developer evangelist hosting numerous hackathons and other events that required registration, signups, and reminders. Definitely would have made my life way easier, and Power Platform definitely would have saved me hours of work. So, Chris, as much as it would be pretty awesome to be speaking to a robot right now, I'm glad you're human. Why don't you give us a fun, quick intro? Also curious if you have a fun home automation or sneakers story.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing well. I am, in fact, a human, Edwin. Thanks for teeing that up. My name is Chris Shanku. I'm an intelligence technical specialist. That doesn't mean I'm smart. It just means I have a title of intelligence technical specialist. What that really means, though, is I'm very focused on Power BI and the Power Platform as well. I've been at Microsoft almost 3 years. I've spent my whole career doing Microsoft BI as well as working within the Power Platform, driving value for our FSI customers here in the US. I live in Kansas City. My heart's in Georgia, so you're probably going to see some UGA-related things in my demo environment when we pivot over there here in a minute. I'm a new father. Or soon-to-be new father, rather. I can't get too excited just yet. My wife is 34 weeks pregnant. It's a recent shot. I know, Edwin, you mentioned some of my passions outside of work, right? Home automation, I love. I'm a self-proclaimed sneakerhead. So much, in fact, that one of my favorite sneakers here had to get a match one for the new son to be. So I appreciate you teaming me up there for sure. I'm excited to be a dad, but that's for later. Right now, I'm excited to be hanging out with everyone today.
No, very cool. Now it makes me want to get some matching sneakers with my kids. So let's go ahead and jump right in, Chris. What will you be talking about today, and why should the audience care about the Power Platform?
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to talk actually about a solution that I built for myself for managing my events here in Kansas City using the Power Platform. So I'll probably start really quickly level setting, 3 or 4 minutes. I kind of opted out of the 800 PowerPoint slide presentation today. I just want to do a few slides on what is the Power Platform, just to level set. And then we're going to go into the use case, right? Why it was a matter to me, how it made my life easier. But I want to spend the most of this actually in the product, showing you guys what I did.
That's great. So you're saying that all of this is tied to Microsoft 365?
All of it. Everything we're showing today is part of M365. And if you own E3 or higher, you're fully licensed to do everything I'm going to show you today.
All right, fantastic. So, I recall from a previous conversation, you mentioned you hosted a bunch of events and training sessions as well. Can you tell us where the Power Platform really helped you, use cases where it helps our financial services customers, and what tools are required for this, as well as this overview over here?
Yeah, absolutely, Edwin, right? So the Power Platform really is at its core Power Apps, Power BI, Power Automate, and then not featured Power Virtual Agents for kind of using no-code bots. It's a very no-code, low-code framework. We'll also talk about Microsoft Forms, which isn't officially part of the Power Platform, but I like to joke that it gets invited to Christmas dinner every year.
So when you say low code, no code, is it someone who's familiar with Excel, or is it someone who, has some coding experience? What does that really mean?
I think it'll appeal to everyone, Edwin, right? The intended audience is that Excel kind of mindset, right? But there's an extensive pro dev capability. But this session today is going to be focused on how we can build this event management system. And you'll see, I'm going to build it all without writing a single line of code.
Oh, that's awesome. I know you're going to have, walk through three different events, manage events in 3 stages. So let's go ahead and talk about what those stages look like.
Yeah, so I'm going to do real quick, just kind of a quick product landscape, right? So 1 slide each one, right? So Microsoft Forms, that's going to be the tool that we use to actually capture registration info. At its core, it's primarily a survey tool, right? But really what it does, it just gets data from our users. So this is what we'll kind of pivot to here in a bit to show you what I use to capture registration from our customers. The next piece of that, of course, is, well, when that data comes in, what can I do with it, right? That's where Power Automate comes into play. This is our built-in automation tool. Kind of think when a trigger happens, go ahead and automatically do a handful of actions. So we'll talk about here how when someone registers, what do I want to do? Where do I want to put that data? Then how do I want to begin the event management process? Power Apps will come in as a no-code, low-code way to create a UI to better manage that data. So certainly, and you'll see how I can actually go into where that data is stored and manually do approvals and things like that. But it's 2020, I want an easier way to be able to do this from my mobile device, et cetera. That's where Power Apps will come in.
That's great.
And of course, my favorite product, Power BI. This is our BI reporting platform. Ultimately, what's actually happening, give me some analysis. So here's where you'll see I'll kind of start to put my command center together, which I'll reference here in a bit. But ultimately, let me know what's going on, who is signed up, is it a heavy IT audience, to make sure that I'm tailoring my message accordingly. And then last but not least, everyone else's favorite product, Microsoft Teams. This is where I want everything to come together. So we'll kind of just set this aside. I think everyone's using Teams right now, so it needs no introduction, but a critical point of this.
Great, and we're talking about, how it is all tied to Microsoft 365. There's a lot of stuff around, governance, DLP, things that are built in. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so right, like you said, Johansson, this is part of Microsoft 365. So what that means, if you've never used any of these products before, if you are an Office 365 customer, the very first time that you go to log in to Power BI or Power Apps, you're going to inherit all the security and compliance investments you've already put in at your organization. So everything starts with Azure Active Directory. So if you have policies in place, say conditional access, that forces you to maybe log in from your network IP address, or maybe through a VPN that your company manages because of COVID, right? Power BI and the entire platform will inherit all of that, right? That will apply the very first time you log in. Also, if you're using Intune for device management and you have to be logging in from a company managed laptop or phone, same thing as well. So you're getting all of this without doing anything else because this is all part of Microsoft 365.
No, that's absolutely awesome. I know, folks that manage registrations or they want to host talks or, internal meetings, et cetera. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And, I think you've considered them into 3 different stages. Can we talk about what that looks like and what the process is, and perhaps how we can plug it in and make it easy?
Yeah, so when I kind of thought about building this use case out myself, right? This is, again, something that I built for my personal use. So a couple years ago, when I first started at Microsoft, I was hosting a lot of events in Kansas City around training for Power BI, dashboard in the days, and things like that. And I wanted kind of a way to be able to control and manage these myself. Being a tech junkie, I knew that we had this platform. So I decided to build this whole process myself. And I thought it was pretty cool, right? So the big 3 pieces of it that I needed to build was, one, I needed a way to, of course, capture registration. Give me an external facing tool that allowed users to sign up. And one of the biggest business rules that I wanted to implement is I wanted to go ahead and auto waitlist everyone who attended, right? Or everyone who registered. The reason I did that is I wanted these events to be one-to-many, right? I wanted to have a good customer reach, and I wanted to make sure as well that I was reaching a diverse group of audience as well, maybe not just all BI developers. So I wanted to kind of avoid the nightmare scenario of a one-to-many event where I post an event and then someone comes in and registers maybe 25, 30 people at their organization, and then it kind of defeats the purpose. So what I would do is I would auto waitlist everyone automatically upon registration. That will allow me kind of to move into number 2 here to be able to manage the attendance of that event, right? I think I already kind of said that. I wanted to make sure I was reaching lots of customers. I wanted to make sure that I had various titles involved as well. And then, of course, doing this would allow me to better prepare for the event, how I could say, hey, this is going to be, maybe I have 80% of the people registering from the business versus IT. Maybe I don't want to get in depth around dimensional modeling, star schemas, and I want to keep it more high level about just reporting and analysis in Power BI. So this is kind of a system that I built that allowed me that flexibility, and it was very, very easy for me, and it made my job easier as well.
Now that's great, Chris. I think our financial services customers are hosting events both internally for their organizations, things like hackathons, to even publicly facing events where they're bringing in their clients, et cetera. So this is a great way for them to kind of leverage the Power Platform here with stuff that they already own, and build something like this. So tell us what we need to kind of get started with this.
Yeah, so in terms of what I needed, right, and what I would kind of say what you need as well, right, is hey, first of all, of course, we have to have a tool to capture registration info, right? Then once users register, we need a place, of course, to store that data. We need a way to approve registration accordingly. Of course, that report was super helpful for me to understand who was registered, right, and how I could tailor my message. And then, of course, automation to tie everything together. But then ideally, I just wanted to be able to go to one place to do everything, not just manage it, but also be able to communicate with other co-managers or guests I was bringing in so they could be a part of the process as well. Most importantly, right, I'm busy. I know we're all busy. This had to be easy for me. So go figure, right? Microsoft 365. So we're going to talk around all of these products that I used. Microsoft Forms. I picked SharePoint Online to store my data primarily because it was part of Microsoft 365 and I already owned it. SQL Server, other database platforms, absolutely, right? But yeah, we'll talk about the entire Power Platform here. And I really want to prove to you that this really was easy both to build as well as to manage.
Chris, this sounds really exciting. I can't wait to see this in action. So let's walk through the workflow, show us kind of how this all works. I'm excited. Let's build it.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so I've kind of just jumped immediately into Microsoft Forms. Okay, so this is when I log in. So a couple things real quick. You'll see that I'm logged in here to my Microsoft account, right? And I'm looking at all of my forms here. So I'll kind of hop into one of these. I've never used Forms before. In my opinion, this is the easiest part. Okay, so I'm going to go into one that I've already built, and it's very UI driven. So when I can click on this, right, and I can edit my header. Who knows what's going on with the image here? I can give a little description, right, and then I can immediately go into creating questions. So when I create a question, right, very simple. I choose what type of question I want. So for here, just a sample list of what I had here. Hey, I want to capture the user's name, and I want to make that a required question, right? And then, of course, how do I get a hold of them? We see it's got some helpful UI here just popping up as new features come out, right? So again, just a few simple details about what I needed from my customer in order to communicate with them about the event, as well as to help me manage the event as well. So again, I'm not necessarily going to create this here because it's just this simple, right? I can go ahead and add a new question if I wanted. Maybe I'll kind of do a rating. We see this, but of course I don't need that for this, right? So I can go in here and just add that to the trash. Okay. So you'll see a few more questions here, department role. I can come up here. I can give a little theme if I want to make it, right, a bit more personal in that sense. I can import my own, so on and so forth here. Whenever I'm ready, what I would do is I would just click on share. I would copy this link, and this would be the link that I would distribute out to customers. Okay, so we'll go ahead and kind of just paste that here, and we'll just kind of give a sample registration. I'm glad to see that logo finally showed up. So I will register myself here with my Microsoft account, Intelligence TS.
So Chris, while you're doing this, right, this was super easy, right? And this is something that with Microsoft Forms, it's part of the Microsoft 365 platform. So, it's fair to say probably this is something similar to customers using something like SurveyMonkey, for example. So it's kind of relatively easy to pick up. I mean, you just walk through that example in a matter of a few seconds here, and really just kind of created a form. But then now this again is bounded inside of kind of Microsoft 365, inside of that organizational data, so that our financial services customers can kind of own where this data is inside of their environment versus maybe inside of a SurveyMonkey or some public-facing tool. They can kind of own it inside of here.
Exactly. No, I think you nailed it spot on, right? It is comparable to SurveyMonkey. We want it to be easy to use, similar to that tool as well as some of the other enterprise tools out there as well to capture info. Yep, I think you nailed it. Okay, so I quickly created a form, right? We're kind of just calling this one again that I used in the past. So an event for my St. Louis one that I hosted a couple of years ago. So we'll come back to this here in a second. I mentioned, right, certainly I have to have a tool to register data, but then I wanted to also be able to put it somewhere that I can manage it. I picked SharePoint for that, okay? So a couple things that I did prior to everything I'm showing today is the first thing I did was I created a Microsoft Teams. I told you I was a UGA grad, so I called it Dog Data. So I created a Microsoft Teams channel, a team and accordingly channels for this that I'll show you in a bit. But of course, because it's M365, what happened with that, it created an Office group as well. But then it created a SharePoint site too. So this is great because within that SharePoint site, I just went ahead and pre-created a SharePoint list with all of the columns that I needed, both to what I was capturing from forms, as well as some other things that were relevant to the event that I was hosting. Okay, so now that I created this, we'll come back to this because ultimately what I want to do is I want to create my first Microsoft flow inside Power Automate to automate storing the data in here. Okay. So one of the great things, because I'm using SharePoint Online, that's part of M365, is we have built-in integration here with Power Automate. So I can just come down here if I want to, and I can create a flow, right? I'll come back to this because what I liked to do here was actually pivot instead into Power Automate, go into my templates, which are pre-built for everyone using Power Automate, search for forms, and we see this top result here is, hey, I want to go ahead and record form responses in SharePoint. That's exactly what I want to do. So this is great. So while this is loading up, what Power Automate does, it's just a process tool that sits on top of data, and you have to be able to connect to that data. So it doesn't give you access any data that you don't already have. So the first thing you'll do here is you'll have to go ahead and prove that you can connect to this. So I've already entered my connection information, right? I've authenticated both to forms and to SharePoint. And now when I click in continue, now we're just going to open up this pre-built template and I can do some customization. So I want this to trigger every time someone submits a response. So I'm going to go here. It's going to show all of my forms. I'm going to scroll down to that St. Louis one. I'm going to select this, right? So now that it's listening for responses to that form. When someone submits a response, first I want to go and grab all the details of that. And then I want to go and post an item in my SharePoint list. So again, I'm logged in, so it detects all of my assets, right? It finds this dog data site. Now it's going to load all of the lists. I'm going to go down to my dyads. And then you'll see here, Flow will automatically grab all of those column headers in the list and give me the ability to map data. So for a few of these, I'm going to just go ahead and hard code some data here. I know this is the dashboard of the day because I've created the event. I know that it's on, I think it was April 18th, 2018, right, in St. Louis. But for most of this, I want this to be dynamic, right? I want to have data stored based on the responses of that form. So if you haven't used Power Automate, one of the powerful things is you can bring data and apply it to any piece from any prior step in your flow. So for attendee name, I just want to go down here and I want to map the answer from my name question in my form to this column here. So I'll do this with email, with company, you get the idea. But then most importantly, down to the status value, I want to hard code everyone to waitlist to follow my rule as before, right?
So Chris, so just, just want to touch on a couple things here, right? This process that you're using to kind of create a workflow is relatively intuitive, right? It's being able to use the data sources, like you said, from the previous steps. You don't have to worry about, I know a lot of our financial services customers are using things like SharePoint Designer workflows that they had to code and do different things like that, or even InfoPath. I think we had a question that was asked by an attendee. Was just around, is forms the replacement to InfoPath, right? And I think what I think he's trying to allude to here is, and you can probably better answer this, is that these tools are better used in terms of the flexibility and the ease of use, right? You're not having to kind of go in and, InfoPath, you had to maybe code some things, and it's not as user friendly as what you're showing here. And then the workflow piece, you don't have to go in and code some workflow. This is literally like a GUI style drag and drop. So really interactive.
Definitely, yeah. So I wouldn't say forms is the replacement for InfoPath, right? Well, we're going to look at Power Apps here in a minute. That's kind of how we want customers to modernize their InfoPath experience today, right? That's a more rich development tool with a similar easy-to-use UI, but also the backing of an entire Pro Dev library to get as customizable as you want. We're going to showcase how Power Apps ties in here in just a few seconds, okay?
Thanks, Chris. And just a reminder for everyone, please use the Q&A and put your questions in. We're going to take them live, and then we'll save some towards the end as well. So
I want to call out Ajaz. Thank you for asking that question. I mentioned we might save it to the end, but we're always doing this live, so feel free to ask more questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so a few more things I'll do. I'm going to go ahead and skip over to a finished version of this, right? So after I created this item, I went ahead and I wanted to send that user an email, just letting them know that their registration was received. I can call them by name, right? I can tell them what event they're registering for at the company. I liked this because this actually would send an email directly from me, right? It wasn't from a bot or a service account. So because my users got an email from me, if they replied directly, I got it as well. And it made it more personal. I could interact with them prior to the event. And then lastly, I would post this message in a Teams channel, right? Just so I could kind of track that as well. Okay. So we'll see here now that I've got this complete, right? I can expect that when someone registers for the event, it's going to automatically capture, store that in a SharePoint list, and then send them an email. So if I go back into SharePoint, I look at this bottom row, it's one that I just created, right? It's me, it's an intelligence TS. And in addition to that, I also got an email that kind of from myself, of course. It said, hey, Chris, thanks for registering. This is the event. I love hearing. Hey, talked about my waitlist policy. And then again, if they reply, this goes directly back to me because that's who it came from. Okay. So let's kind of keep going. So now this data is here in SharePoint, right? And now I want to go into managing the attendance as well, AKA I want to start approving or rejecting accordingly. Okay. So to the point of bulkiness, I could certainly come in here, select one of these rows, one I just added, hit edit in SharePoint Online, go down and find where's it at? Oh, the status down here, and improve it this way. That is certainly an option, right? But again, I want this to be easier. I want to be able to do this maybe from my phone. I want to be able to do it from within Teams. So where I want to do that is actually, I want to think about Power Apps, okay? So again, just like before with Automate, we have this Power Apps integration built into SharePoint. So if I just come down here and say FSI Fridays event management, I'm going to hit create. And this is actually going to spin up a simple 3-screen CRUD app that allows me to create, read, update, and delete records against my data source, which is this SharePoint list.
Chris, that's pretty powerful, right? I mean, what's that, like 3 clicks to go from SharePoint list into a full app that you can use across, iOS, Android, your Windows browser, really anywhere. 3 clicks. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll see here in a second, right? It's 3 clicks in about 30 seconds or so, and it's going to generate all this for us. So when this screen goes away, we're going to have a fully functional app. It doesn't mean that we necessarily want to just leave it here. But if we want to, I can go here and play. I've got this screen. Again, we want to do a little bit of editing here, but if I want to, I can add a new record, right? I can also view a record. I see there's a couple fields that I'm missing here, but I can edit. So I look at this and I say, hey, I need to add a couple more fields to both this edit and view form, and I want to clean up how this looks a little bit, okay? So I'm going to go here, and the first thing I'm going to look at on this browse screen is this gallery, right? So this gallery is just kind of viewing, it's interactive, clickable, all of these records. So when I edit this, I can go over here to the right, and I can see what my fields are. It's already pointing to that SharePoint list. So I want to do a couple things. One, I want to change this title to map to maybe my attendee name, right? And then for body, maybe we'll change this to their company. Actually, you know what? Let's do their status. And then the event date will go here to the company. So a few options, right? And we see everything's reflected for all of these records down here. Okay. Next, I'm going to go over to this detail screen, right? And I'm going to open up the form that's inside of this. Form similar to a gallery, just not as interactable, right? So over here, I want to edit fields, and mainly I want to add one of these other fields from my SharePoint list, right? So it's pulling all of the columns in my data source. The main one that I want is status, right? I can bring in role. When I hit add, you see they come down here. They're also visible here as well. And if I want to, right, I can drag these and reorder them accordingly. And we see they're pretty much reflected in real time here in my app, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing now for my edit screen, edit fields. I'm going to go up now, and I'm just going to bring over the status here. Okay. So now we have a much more interactable app, right? So I can come through here now, and I can see my items. I can do some searches based on how I've kind of interacted this. I can do some sources as well. But when I click on any of this, right, it's going to take me directly into a record that I have. And so now, because I brought their status in, right, If I had mine, I could come in here and I could immediately change this over from approved to waitlisted to approved, right? And then that would allow me to do some interaction from there. So at this point, I don't have to do anything else. I could do more if I wanted, but I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to save this app and I'm going to publish it out to my Power Apps environment. I could share this with my dog data group if I wanted. And now everyone who has access to that Teams, that group, that SharePoint list now has access to run this app as well.
So Chris, you talked about bringing this app into other places and making it maybe a little bit more integrated. So can I use this on my mobile device?
You can.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So this is fully ready, right? So I could download the Power Apps app from my store, right? Apple, iOS. If you have a Windows phone still, thank you. It's available for all three, right? So I download this free Power Apps app. I log in with my Office 365 ID, and then I'm going to see all the apps that either A, I own, or B, someone has explicitly shared with me. But I can take this even further, right? So I can take this how I can integrate this with other tools. Real quick, before I kind of get into that, the last flow that I had to build here is certainly we had that flow to store data in SharePoint when it was registered, but now I want to have another management flow to take action when I approve or reject someone accordingly. Okay, so I'm going to skip kind of creating this and just show a finished product of this. So I had my registration one, and now I have my managed attendance here. And what this is, right? I can just point directly to this site and this list. I can do that as well by going straight and creating a form from SharePoint from the Power Automate. And so now that I'm here, right, I can set conditions on this. So in this one, I kind of just expanded and said, hey, if that status is approved, go ahead and send them an approval email, post a message in SharePoint. So this flow right here, just listening on the SharePoint list to any time an item in that list is created or modified, right? It will kick this off. If it's, hey, you're changing the condition of this status value, then take appropriate action for accept, take appropriate action as well for rejected, right? And that way I'm making sure that my users are getting informed and staying in the loop as well. They get a separate email, and now I've got managing an event, and I can kind of keep this process moving. Okay, so back to the integration piece. The last portion of this is I wanted to create a Power BI report to tie this all together. Okay, so I have a very simple Power BI report that I've already built here. I'm connected to my SharePoint, to my SharePoint list, and I've got some simple analytics about who was there, right? So I could filter by event date. I can see this breakdown between business and IT. I can see my my customers, right? What that kind of reach is accordingly. If I go to wait list, right, I can see all of that. Okay. Where I want to take this one step further is just like this is a donut chart or a bar chart here. There's actually its own Power App visual inside Power BI. So I can click on this Power App. I can bring it down here. I can say, hey, I can bring the data in that I want, attendee name, city, email, right? And then what I can do here is I can actually choose an app. It's going to go into my app collection. Again, the ones that either I own or B, someone has explicitly granted me access to use. And it's going to allow me to embed one of those created Power Apps right inside my Power BI report. So we see we have the one that I just created, this FSI Fridays event management. And so when I add this here, we'll skip this for a second. Again, this is going to now embed this Power App right inside my Power BI report. So when I
hey Chris, I mean, you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I mean, this is amazing. I know that you can add, say, Power BI reports to Teams. So if you and I and Johansson and Al are working on some event, and we just want to kind of have it as a tab, is this something that can be easily integrated into Teams as well? Again, not to interrupt here, but it just seems like an easy way to manage events through multiple people through Teams.
Definitely. So let's do this in action, right? So this is here. I can save this. I can publish it out. And then I'm just going to bring over a Teams client. Again, this is that dog data team I told you, right? It's got some of this information around, hey, I added someone registered before. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and add a Power BI tab. I'm going to go ahead and grab from my dog data workspace. Again, that same workspace is here now, right? Grab what I call dyad registrations, save it. And now I've got this embedded inside my team here. Okay, so I can maximize this, right? It's got my Power BI report. It's got my Power App as well, right? And this is all interactable. So when I pivot to an event date, right, we see data changes. If I go to waitlisted, I haven't refreshed this, right, but I can have my data on here. I can see myself. Anytime I'm clicking and filtering, this Power App receives that context as well. So maybe I go in here to Chris, right? I see him, I edit this, I change it to approved, I hit check, right? And then I can immediately, we see this is reflected back in the data, and now I can chat about this. So if I tag Johansson, because he's in the group and he's in my organization, I can say, hey, I approved Chris. Anybody else you want to approve by end of day? He's going to get a notification now. We can have conversations about this, right? But I can just go here. This is my command center. So this is what I would do. I would put this in Teams. I would open up this Power BI report, and I would fully manage my events right from inside here. When users get added, they would show up. When I made changes and approved someone, I could see that. I could tailor my audience accordingly. I could make sure I was getting reach. This was it. This is how I would manage my events.
So Chris, this is, truly amazing because this applies more than just event management, right? I mean, you think about our financial services customers that are working on dashboards and looking at data and then having to do some sort of process, whatever it may be. What you've just showed here, taking it outside of the context of event management and more into the context of maybe, financial models and working with data, they can visualize the data with Power BI, then leverage Power Apps to then run workflows or run processes against that data. I mean, this is, really transformational stuff, and having it all then centered inside of Microsoft Teams so that you can then, like you just showed, mention somebody and have a conversation around the process in which you're working on. You think about, some of the things that our customers are doing today. They're sending an email with a screenshot of a dashboard, and then they're saying, hey, can you go and send this email once you get the dashboard? And they're actually manually doing all these things. You've just showed here how you can do it all in kind of what you call the command center inside of Microsoft Teams, have the conversation, reduce the amount of emails that you're sending kind of back and forth, and really just transform business operations in general.
Absolutely. And it's all auditable, right? Everything I've done here, I've, published this Power App. I've shared this report to a group. I've embedded it in Teams. The comments that I'm doing inside Power BI, all of that is tracked as well in your Office 365 audit logs. So it's not just that actions are happening. You can actually see and monitor and track all of this as well.
And that's an important piece for our financial services customers that, need to audit and track every conversation or every activity that occurs. They can do all of that in, leveraging, again, this entire Microsoft 365 ecosystem. Now, one of the things that you showed, you created this event, and it took you a little bit of time here, to kind of walk through the process. What if I have another event? What if I have another, how repeatable is this? Do I have to start from scratch again? Or, how do I do this for future events?
Absolutely not, right? So again, I wanted this to be easy, and that's a big part of it too, right? So let me kind of walk through real quick how I would recreate this for a new event. Okay, so I'll minimize Teams and go back into my list here. So the first thing I have to do, I have to create a new registration form, right? So of course I could start from this scratch, but instead I could just go over here and find the one that I did. I could copy this, right? And now I have a new form here. Maybe I just changed the name of this, right? Maybe I have this as 7/31/2020, right? I can change this information. And again, I can save this, and now I have a new form, right? Step 1 is done. Step 2, I need to create a new form to capture that data and move that into my SharePoint list. So similar to forms, I have my 8 registration, or my 814 one here. Whoops. I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to say now, hey, I want to save this as a new flow, right? So we'll call this 7/31/20 registration. It's going to save this here, and it's going to copy and paste, right, all of that logic that I implemented in that flow. And now I just have to go back into that flow, right, do a little bit of editing just to make sure that, hey, I want to point this to the new form that I created, 7/31. I want to make sure to grab the response details from the new one that I created, 7/31. And then I just want to update this a little bit, right? So I got to go 7/31/2020. If it's a dashboard in a day, great. But that's it. I change the location. It's going to capture everything from my form, right, that users submit. And that's honestly it, right? This Power App, again, it's still going to go over that same SharePoint list. I'm storing data in the same place, so this UI will work against it. The second flow that I got, right, isn't specific to an event. It's only being triggered when a response is not just submitted, but when a row is edited in that list. So I create a new form, I create a new flow to capture that automation. I take this form, I copy this link, I share it out, and boom, my new event is live.
Wow, Chris. I mean, that was really quick and really easy. So I know, I know that there are other integrations and other places in which you could probably even enhance this. Could you talk a little bit more of just kind of what else you could do to maybe even enhance this capability here, or this solution here?
Yeah, definitely. So again, this is something that I built, right? But it's been a couple of years since I built it. Where I would have liked to invest this more, right? And where I think we could take this more, a few things. One, instead of storing this data inside SharePoint Online, I would love to store this data inside DataFlex Pro, right? So this is the new flexible, right, muscle branded name for what we used to call Common Data Service, right? So storing this here, it's a business application data repository. So it makes it kind of better integration to create additional apps on top. But the big reason for that is it's extensively integratable immediately with Dynamics 365. So I could store this in DataFlex Pro, and as a result, I can maybe, as I'm capturing information, create new accounts, right? Create new leads or attach information to existing accounts that I already have. Maybe I want to spin up a campaign to manage events as well, right? And everything kind of gets triggered from there. And then investing from Microsoft Forms, which is built into Office, to Microsoft Forms Pro, right, allows me some more integration. Maybe I want to schedule surveys to get sent out. Maybe I want to kick off a campaign in Dynamics, and then once it's ready, I can immediately blast that out to all of my leads that I have a new event, and then 24 hours after that event ends, maybe auto send a survey for feedback as well, and tie all of that in together back in DataFlex Pro because it's built on Dynamics 365.
Well, Chris, man, thanks for the insightful session. What resonates with me is that 3-click events management, essentially. It's quick and easy, like 6-minute apps. Why make life harder than it has to be?
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fun session. Let's go ahead and take some Q&A and see what questions we have as well.
Yeah, so we've got a question in the chat window from Petra that's, there's a comment, really cool demo, ties together, several different loose ends here that around just even event management. I see that it's possible to sort the list, but I can filter, or is that only available in the Power BI view? So can I filter it inside of the Power App? I think is the line of questioning here. Like, what types of filtering, sorting applications can I do inside of the Power App instead of just kind of doing it in typical kind of Power BI?
Yeah, I probably should have demoed that better. I appreciate that question. It's a very good one, right? So you might have seen in that Power App that I generated, right? It has that search box. That's fully functional, right? It's just set up to only look at one field. So you just have to make sure, if you do nothing else, that the field you want to search over is the one that it's pointing at. It's also got sorting as well, top to bottom, right? A to Z or Z to A. Again, that's what you get just by clicking on that create an app. But if you want to customize that and add your own kind of sort element or search element, absolutely possible within the Power Apps framework.
Yeah, Chris, you touched upon briefly, around requirements, being able to track stuff. I just want to make sure that, using things like SharePoint and Teams as we talk through compliance requirements, that, it fulfills those needs.
Yeah, right. Again, it's part of all Microsoft 365. So the security and compliance offerings that are part of that package, right? SharePoint's part of that. Teams is part of that, right? Absolutely, you can expect integration with the offerings in that space.
Great. Another question we have here is, you showed some of the connectors with the flow, which was automating. Are there other connectors into other applications? Maybe, thinking about this more from a financial services use case scenario, can I connect into data that's stored in an on-premises SQL database, for example, or other data sources? What options are available?
No, absolutely. Great question, right? So I don't remember exactly the number of native connectors that we have out of the box, but I do know it's well over 100, right? So we can connect to certainly data in Office 365. We can connect to data in Azure Dynamics. We can also connect to data on-prem as well, right? SQL Server absolutely is supported, but even outside of the Microsoft space, Oracle, DB2, maybe up in the cloud, right? Maybe you want to connect to Salesforce, Marketo if you're doing marketing, right? ServiceNow if you want to track on incidents, things like that. I would just say make sure that you're keeping licensing in mind, right? The demo that I showed, because everything's in Office 365 and that's where all the data lives, we can use it in the confines of our Office 365 licensing. But if we're stepping outside of that, some additional licensing charges may apply. So just something to kind of have a conversation with your Microsoft account team, and we can absolutely help clarify.
Great. So, thanks again for attending and all the live questions. Chris, you've been super helpful. I love live demos, and it worked out just great. So I also want to mention to the audience again, thanks for joining. We have aka.ms/FSI Fridays for feedback. We always want to understand what you want to hear about next, how these sessions were. We also have a YouTube channel up, aka.ms/FSI Fridays recap, where we go ahead and post all the videos in case you missed it or you want to review it. So we're really excited about that. Johansson, we have a pretty exciting August schedule. You want to share what we have lined up?
Yeah, no, our August schedule is really, we're going to focus on Azure and AI August, and then we're going to talk about all of these different topics here, from things like intelligent payments to some of the things that we're going to do about responsible AI. So I really encourage you to join us and hear from amazing speakers, focusing again on how financial services organizations are leveraging the power of Azure and AI to really transform the way they do business and the way they work today.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.